ladies and gents, welcome to episode 58, I think it is. 58, because it was 57 interviewing Ryan Bennett on Friday night, and we discussed manufacturing and fatherhood and careers and all of that shit. But this is a Fuck This Week edition. If you're not familiar with those, every now and then, once every couple of weeks usually, I riff on the week's news and current affairs and all that shit. And basically, I try to make sense of the senseless with you guys. So if you're bored, join me for the live chat, for the live stream, and let me know your thoughts on what's going on out there. And in the meantime, I'm just sort of looking at weird and wonderful news stories. I found one this morning that's it's so perfectly like Americana, but it's also a perfect metaphor for where we're at now with the pandemic. It's if you're bothered about finding the news story as well, it's on something called usnews.com, and here's the headline: Police: man shoots up Idaho motel after smoking fee charge. So just let that sink in for a minute. Shoots up a motel in Idaho after being given a fine for smoking. It's just, you see what I mean? It's just so perfectly like American, and just, it's the sort of thing where as Brits we look at it, we digest this news, and we're just like, oh dear God, guys, come on, you're supposed to be quote unquote the greatest country in the world. This is the greatest democracy in the world, man. Man shoots up Idaho motel after a smoking fine. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we? Like, this is, I mean, in terms of shooting up a motel based on a smoking fine, like, this is where we're headed in the UK, just in case, like, because I know I'm talking about an American news story here, but the reason that I'm talking about this is because this is kind of the trajectory that we're on. Like, every time we hear someone going on about sovereignty and freedom, they are the opening lyrics to this song, Shooting Up the Motel Over a Smoke. Like, it starts with a guy saying, oh, I wish I could take back a bit of control. And through like the magic of a referendum and shit kind of corporate media designed to attract clicks and get you enraged rather than inform and educate. There's a brief stop at masks are infringing on my libertarian sensibilities, like that. But then over that journey through the clicks and the corporate media and the failure to inform and educate and the libertarianism and all that stuff, then a few years down the line, you get to your radicalized GB News watching brother-in-law shooting an assault rifle at a hotel because they asked him nicely 3 times to put the cigarette out before eventually giving him a fine. You know, like, that's the trajectory that we're on with this sort of like libertarian freedom sovereignty kind of rhetoric. Like, do you think these people like who would shoot up a hotel because they perceive you to be infringing on their right to smoke a cigarette, like, do you think they think that they're rational? That's what I always wonder. It's like, do they believe that this is rational behaviour? Like, if you pulled that guy aside and asked him, as I'm sure law enforcement professionals are doing right now, but if they asked him, like, they asked you to extinguish the cigarette 3 times, there's no smoking and fire hazard shit on every door and window, do you think pulling out an AR-15 and spraying 3 rounds across the premises like shit's Butch Cassidy or something, do you think that's rational behaviour, Mr. Smith? Is that how a sane human being behaves? Or do you think, in your interaction with the exhausted minimum wage woman behind the counter who didn't even want to fine you, like, she just had to fine you because her manager was watching her from the CCTV, buzzing through like, you have to tell them to stop, Jen, or they'll just keep doing it. Sarah doesn't have a problem with fining them, and that's why Sarah is the duty manager right now. And then she's like, oh, fuck it, fine. And then she's like, sir, I didn't want to get in your business, but... And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, my boss is breathing down my neck about your smoking. Like, personally, I don't care. I work in a motel where 90% of the customers are 90% full of meth. You think I give a shit if you give yourself cancer? I don't. But my boss wants me to fine you, so now I gotta fight. Like, you know, do you think he thinks he's rational when he behaves in that way to that woman who doesn't even want to fine him? And he goes out and then fucking sprays the place with bullets. I I'd love to hear his take on it. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of that police interview. Do you think this was the right course of action, sir? Yeah. She's infringing on my freedom. It's like, as a species, we're really fucking shit, aren't we? Like ants work together, dogs roam in packs, humans just decide to do whatever is best for them personally in isolation at that one moment in time. This is what's best for me right now. Like, it's not even what's best. Like, what's best for you is to stop smoking and let your lungs slowly exorcise the 25 years of tar and toxins you've caked a critical organ in. It's just what I want. It's not what's best. It's like, it's just what I want. I just want what I want. It's just what I want, and you're gonna get it for me. You know, it's like that kind of attitude. We're so shit. We just want what we want right now, whatever the cost to everyone else. Like, people are so drunk on the idea that the customer is always right, aren't they? Like, they're so, like, that setup of going into a shop and saying, I want to be able to smoke in here. Or in a restaurant, you walk in with your dog, your filthy fucking shit-arsed dog. Sit down at a sir, you can't bring your dog in here. This is a restaurant. There's food and hygiene. No, it's the customer is always right. It's so set up for, like, sociopaths. It's like, this is what I want, is to sit here with my dog. Fuck everyone else's hygiene and what they want to consume and whether they want to have my dog's poo, like, draped all over the floor of the place that they're paying a premium to eat. It's just what I want at that exact moment. Like, this, when we say, like, the customer is always right and like, whatever I want above all else, like, this story shooting up the hotel over a smoking fine because you want to smoke, like, this could be a metaphor for the pandemic. It's a perfect metaphor. It's a hotel where everyone has to stay safe, but they all end up dying because one prick doesn't want to suffer a minor inconvenience for the greater good. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the pandemic in a nutshell, and our reaction to it. Like, would you mind smoking in the courtyard? Is like saying, would you mind wearing a mask? You know? It's like a minimal inconvenience to you, and the possibility is that you save lives, and it's better for everyone in the hotel or in the world. And it's the same bullshit response. It's like, no, fuck you. I do what I want to do all the time, every day, no matter whose life I risk. Freedom. Like, is it, you know, wanking into a flag, like they're a 14-year-old boy wanking into a sock. Like, it's the same thing. Like, with this hotel versus the pandemic, you could not ask for a better metaphor / news story in that respect. And I know that this is Idaho and it's not the UK yet, but this is where we're headed. You know, like, this concept of personal freedom trumps all else. My personal rights, my choices are worth more than your safety. How fucked is that? My choices, my personal beliefs, my sort of feelings are worth more and respected more than society or, like, the group's safety. Which just then, like, if you take that attitude and then, you know, scale it up, if you like, it just erupts into a society of, like, 100,000 people making chaotic, stupid or dangerous decisions that jeopardize the safety and success of everyone. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean we can't be compassionate about some decisions. Yeah, like, if they're cultural or religious, or, like, even if they have a bad impact. You know, if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you refuse a blood transfusion for your child and ostensibly murder him, perfect. That is great, obviously. You know, good job. We accept a certain amount of lunacy in society if it relates to religious freedoms. Like, if that's your religion and you believe that that is evil and it will ostracize you from heaven in the afterlife and all that, we let that slide. We're like, all right, well, religious freedoms, you know, there's been centuries of religious persecution, and so in order to not go down that very ugly road again, we will accept some level of lunacy in society. But we draw the line when the religious freedoms curtail someone else's freedoms, right? That's the distinction. It's like if somebody says, Yeah, my church says that I need to visit the villagers' homes in the dead of night and slaughter everyone's firstborn. If somebody says that, then we're like, no, that is not okay. That is lunacy, and you are infringing on other people's freedoms and rights to live. So we don't accept that. So I don't know why we afford more like deathy freedoms to people outside of religion. You know, like in a sort of COVID context, then we afford people more rights at that stage, don't we? Like if somebody says, yeah, like I don't give a fuck about your gran. My rights, my choices are that I sit on this bus and breathe death spores into your respiratory system like I'm a fucking hairdryer of death vapor or some shit. Like that is my right. Then it trumps everyone else's concerns. Then it's like, motherfuck the greater good, you know? Then we just flush the concept of the greater good down the toilet at that stage. We let people's rights and beliefs and everything trump everything in that context. Back to this hotel though. Let's not get sidetracked. I quite like the logic of the smoker gunman guy. You know, like where we're here worried his smoking might start a fire or give someone emphysema, you know, so we're worried about his decisions impacting somebody's life. And meanwhile, he's thinking like, trust me not getting my morning rush is actually saving lives. You have no idea. Like if I don't get this morning rush, if I don't have my morning cigarette, way more people are going to die than fucking... than the prospect of maybe somebody catching emphysema. Then they fine him and stub out his cigarette, and he's like, weirdly, we're about to find out that this hotel's policy has cost more lives than it's saved, Jan. You know, like it's I kind of like that logic. If we go back into the news story though, like the shooting occurred Friday morning at the Motel 6 in Rexburg, Idaho, and no one was injured. Rexburg Police Assistant Chief Gary Hagan said the man was taken into custody later that day in Alpine, Wyoming. His name hasn't been released. Police said he was travelling with a female companion. You know what? I blame the woman. There, I said it. I think obviously the guy's behaviour was unacceptable, but some level of blame has to be apportioned to the woman he was travelling with. I'm making no apologies for saying that. That's, you know, it is at least half her fault. Actually, about 80% her fault. And hear me out, right? This is how I'm getting to this. If you're a guy, testosterone flowing through your body in a country where the national language is basically shooting each other, then I get it. You know, sometimes things are annoying. You have a gloomy Monday morning, you're hungover, your ex-wife is on your case about how she wants more money because she heard you got a raise. Then the staff bollock you for trying to smoke. Like, yes, obviously you fire a machine gun to settle your bill at that point. Fine. I think we can all understand how that man arrived at that, you know, course of action to settle things. But if I know that, like if I'm in the car and I'm about to do something stupid, I don't think I'm alone in this. My girlfriend is like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you retarded? Did you eat crayons at school? The fuck is wrong with you? You know, like having your girlfriend in the car with you is quality control. If I'm in the car by myself, alone, as a man, testosterone flowing through my fucking balls, I'm driving like a twat. I am. I'm sorry. I admit it. I'm driving recklessly. I'm freestyle rapping to myself. I'm being the worst version of myself if I'm in a car alone. I'm irrational. I'm reckless. You know, Philip, you give me the adjectives. You get the idea. But if my girlfriend's in the passenger seat, a lot of those impulses are kind of tempered. You know, I'm not freestyle rapping. I'm not, you know, recklessly overtaking or undertaking people. I'm you know, it's tempered. It is like, I'm not saying I prefer or even like the version of myself that's in the car when my girlfriend is sat next to me. You know, he's inarguably more of a pussy. But from society's perspective, it is a better me, for sure. I'm calmer, I'm tempered. Like, your girlfriend is so the moral compass, or your wife is so the moral compass in the car that she will argue with the fucking sat-nav. You know, like she's figured it out. Like, with 2 decades of satellite traffic technology optimized and perfected by men and women with PhDs and MBEs and shit, they've learned how to predict traffic flow and the fastest route and real-time fucking accident information. But your girlfriend or wife will be like, well, I don't know why it's sending you that way. Stupid thing. You know, like she can't help but interject and improve what is happening within the confines of the fucking car. So I don't know how a man can be in a car making a hot-headed, dumb decision like shooting up a hotel and his girlfriend isn't like, oh God, can you just calm the fuck down, Hank? You know, like, if that was my girlfriend, she'd be like, why does everything have to be a goddamn Republican National Convention? You know, like, she'd just be like trying to temper the can we just stay in one hotel where you don't scream at the staff and call them communist traitors? This is why we can't stay at Airbnbs anymore, Hank. Like, it would be that sort of, you know, so what, like, where was that part missing? Like, how was that part missing? There should have been some quality control to that man's behaviour and personality that does not appear to have been exercised in that particular criminal scenario. So yes, at least 95% of the blame is to be placed at the woman's feet, I think. No one was injured though. That's fucking amazing, isn't it? That's kind of crazy. An AR-15 spraying bullets. It says there's like shattered glass and bullet holes everywhere and no one hurt. Amazing. It says, like, if you go a bit further down, it says, the Madison School District issued a shelter-in-place order for a nearby elementary, middle, and high school as a precaution. Let me reread that. Hold on. The Madison School District issued a shelter-in-place order. I don't know what that is. For a nearby elementary, middle, and high school as a precaution. Is that where the greatest country in the world have to tell their school children to cower in fear every time a local has an argument with a fucking receptionist? Like DEFCON 1, everyone. This could get really ugly. How fucking weird is that? That school kids just do not know if they're going to make it out alive today, and all because Hank McCarthy or whoever didn't want to smoke outside for 5 minutes. Like, what a weird chain of events. You can't smoke in here becomes fucking 1,000 kids cowering under their desks. And no one on the American right ever stops to go, this does not feel right. Like, this must be a smarter way to run this shit. You know, like, how is that a rational, sensible way to run a country and to regulate guns and to, you know? But this is what's so fucked up about, like, rights and freedoms and all that. And not to labour the point, but everyone's so junked out on their right to carry a machine gun into a sweet shop, or their freedom to snatch your mask off your face and breathe death into you. But the cognitive dissonance comes in, like what about the school kids' right to grow up untraumatized? Like, why is that right never acknowledged by the American right? You know, and increasingly by the British right. Why, like, if you look at the way that libertarians operate in Parliament, it's all about my rights this, and my rights and freedoms to, you know, to not have to wear a mask and blah blah blah. And then when you start talking about, you know, more base level right, well, what about my right to not be infected with COVID when I catch the bus into my minimum wage job? How about that? Oh, I don't give a fuck about that. Yeah. I tell you what, if you're really concerned about that, dear constituent, get out a piece of paper, write down your concerns, honestly, put it into an envelope, and then go fuck yourself. Like, that's honestly how they respond to it. It's like, I care about this right now because it affects me personally. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. Like, the customer is always right, and people only care about what impacts them personally at that moment, in that minute. Even if it's not what's best for them, it's just what they want, you know? It's fucked. It's so weird and short-termist, isn't it? I don't know. What about, like, when people say shit like what about the school kids' right to grow up untraumatized, and like what about the people of Iowa's right to not basically grow up in some weird fucking air raid siren war zone setup? Like, how? That's what I don't get. Like, why would you want to live in a society or state or town where you're in that environment, this sort of jarring, trauma-laden town where fucking sirens and, you know, like, everybody get under the desk, like it's like a mini Vietnam or some shit. Like, why would you? Wouldn't it be worth kind of just diluting one of those rights or freedoms so that you don't have to cower under a fucking desk? If you're that fussed about rights and freedoms, surely you should be fussed about being told that you have to cower in a basement. You know? Like, I love Americans. I've met a shit ton of Americans in my life through work and socially, and one of my old friends is married to an American, and one of my favourite ever bosses was from New Jersey, and most of my favourite stand-ups are American. But insofar as, like, America as a geopolitical entity is concerned, this whole idea that it's the greatest country in the world, we're the greatest country in the fucking world, Billy, you know, it's fucking laughable. Greatest country in the freedom. Excuse me. You just want to sit them down like, are you free? Yeah, we're free in America. Right now? Well, no, not right now. Right now we've been told to hide in a basement until they've apprehended the active shooter. You know, it's like, surely if freedoms and rights and shit are the ultimate goal, and then the sacred thing that have to be protected, you would think anything that would be designed to stop you from having to cower under your desk or hide in a basement until, you'd think that would trump everything, wouldn't you? But for some reason, no, not so much. I don't know, man. Let me see. How are we doing for time? Let's talk a little bit for a moment, and then I'm going to wrap up. I know this has been a very short episode, but I got kids, you know. I got to get inside, make sure that they're okay. It's a Sunday morning, guys. One of them's down for a kip. The other one's probably annoying my girlfriend, so I gotta get in there and chip in, help out. But like, when I talk about stories like this is in Iowa. Iowa is my sort of go-to reference for when I'm talking about or making fun of, or I need an example of kind of like middle America, you know, a kind of like white working to middle class kind of place where there's guns and there's, you know, everybody works in a trading estate like the office, and, you know, like, and a lot of this is like, when we're talking about Iowa and middle America and guns and stuff, a lot of it works as a sort of isolated example, or we kind of compartmentalize it as Americana. But when I look at the UK and the kind of the libertarian movement within the Tory party, I don't think a lot of this shit is that far removed from us. You know, I think we like to tell ourselves a comforting story of like, oh, well, that shit just happens in America, or, oh, there's crazy Yanks over there, what are they like? But then I start thinking about how we've moved further and further to the right over the last like 7 years, and I'm like, could it be that in the next 7 years that we relax gun laws in the UK? Like, what would that look like? I suppose they would start saying, like, you know, county lines gangs and drug gangs and like and increased terror threats. There would probably be all that shit. They would be like, it's meant that we're not, this isn't the 80s anymore, this isn't the 70s anymore, guys. Like, we're going to need to arm our cops, and they'll start branding them as cops like America do, like, because there'll be this, we want to be America, this sort of fetishization of America, so we'll name them cops as well to be a bit like them, and so then in arming them, then the gun gangs will do it, and then people will say, well, I think people have a right to arm themselves, and then we'll end up in a situation where we get gun laws relaxed, and then your friends who are constantly talking about libertarian values and your rights to protect yourself and your family will start like championing it, saying like, yeah, I don't see why there is such a big hoo-ha around it. And then we'll start, like, in terms of other, like, right-wing things that we look at in America that we could then bring over here that I don't think is that far-fetched anymore. I don't think it's that far-fetched to think that maybe executions might come back. Like, the death penalty might come back. And they'll say, like, you know, this isn't the 80s anymore. Like, these days, we've got a huge problem with terrorists, huge problem with paedophiles. And yes, I think in some extreme cases, when people are plotting to kill the Queen and do God knows what to her grandchildren, like, maybe in that instance, maybe it is okay to bring executions back. You know, like, I don't think we're actually that far away. When you think about where we were in, like, 2012, I know that's everyone's, like, you know, look back at 2012 and how awesome and progressive and what's the word, and how global and international, like, Britain was then. And then you look at where we're at now, how far we've moved to the right in that space of time. Imagine if we move exactly the same distance but to the right again, like further to the right again in the next, like, 7 years. I don't think it's that outrageous to say that in 7 years' time we could be in that sort of situation. How terrifying is that? And then we'll be in a situation where we can all settle our hotel bills with fucking spraying bullets everywhere. We'll be like, how did we get here? How did things get this bad this quick that I'm now spraying fucking bullets into a travel lodge in Croydon? This is a bad look for me. I did not expect my life to end this way. Anyway, this has been fun, guys. Thanks for listening. If you do want to support the podcast, it's always on Patreon first, patreon.com/AidThompson. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, where I'm always putting up the interviews with guests, and if I can, then I'll usually put a Fuck This Week up there also. Other than that, the podcast is always on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and probably a bunch of other places. I don't know where it ends up. I just click a button on this thing called Pinecast, and then it just posts out to a load of different platforms. So if you're listening from somewhere weird and wonderful, please do say hello. I'm on Twitter. You can tweet at me at AidThompson with an with an IN on the end. So Aid Thompson, but instead of ON at the end, it's IN. And there's also a Twitter for the podcast, which is at And Other Disappointments. Actually, do you know what? I'm talking shit. It's not at And Other Disappointments. I think it's at Oh Shut Up Aid. I think I called it that on Twitter. Oh Shut Up Aid is the podcast's own Twitter, and I just put clips and stuff on there. There's no, like, commentary. My own Twitter, I just never fucking shut up about politics and taking the piss out of politicians and stuff. So if that's your vibe, then just follow me on at Aid Thompson. Anyway, as I say, this has been lots of fun. Stick around. Next Friday night I've got another guest, and we'll be going live from 7:30. It will be a Skype jobby. On Friday night I had my first in-person guest with Ryan Bennett. Very much a sort of proof of concept to see if it was possible to get a guest into this cabin and record it and have two cameras on us. I'm not sure it totally worked in terms of the tech, like getting cameras on us both, and the quality of the mic for my guest leaves a lot to be desired. But I was really grateful that he came over and joined me for a chat and a couple of beers and putting the world to rights. And do you know what? I'm going to have to bite the bullet, guys. I'll have to get another camera and another mic. These things are expensive. You know when you start a hobby and you're like, maybe I'll get into woodwork. Maybe I might explore woodwork because it's like a thing that I've always been in. And so then you buy yourself like a saw and some glue and, like, I don't know, a fucking electric screwdriver. And you're like, yeah, this is going to, I'm really into woodwork now. And then before you know it, the things that you need to actually explore this little cute hobby actually fucking cost, it's like 700 quid or $1,000. You're spending money on circle saws and, like, fucking, you know, big sheets of pine wood, and your girlfriend's like, how much fucking money are you spending on this? Are you not getting carried away? And it's a bit like that with this. Like, I started this podcast like, do you know what? I'll just record a couple of Skype calls. I'll just interview people and just see if people are into it and just upload it as a podcast. Yeah, fuck it, I'll just do it. And now I'm in this situation where I'm like, oh God, I'm going to end up buying a DSLR, aren't I? 500 quid flushed down the toilet. My kids, just ripped clothes, need replacement shoes, and there's no food in the fridge. I'm like, Yeah, maybe I'll just maybe I need another condenser mic so my guest has the same mic quality as I do. Kids are just like, Dad, there's no food in the fridge. We're really hungry, Dad. Can we go to McDonald's? No, it's too expensive. McDonald's is too expensive. Anyway, let me get back to my fucking ordering more audio gear off fucking Amazon. Anyway, listen, sorry to go off on a rant about that. That's my life. Thanks very much for watching / listening. I'll catch up with you next Friday night. Peace out.